This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Got a car to sell but no time to waste? Hop on to Carvana.com to get a real offer for your car in seconds. All you have to do is enter your license plate, answer a few quick questions, and if you accept the offer, Carvana will pay you as soon as you hand the keys over. They even offer same-day pickup in many cities. Save your time, score some cash, and sell your car the convenient way to Carvana. Pickup times vary. Fees may apply.
Shopping is hard.
I can never find anything in my size.
I don't even know my size.
I buy my clothes the same place I buy my groceries.
There's a better way. Make it easy with Stitch Fix. Just share your size, style, budget, and done. Your personal stylist sends pieces picked just for you.
That was easy.
Stitch Fix. Online personal styling for everyone. Free shipping and returns. No subscription required. Get started today at stitchfix.com.
Your burger is served, and this is our finest Pepsi Zero Sugar. Its sweet profile perfectly balances the savory notes of your burger.
That is one perfect combination. Burgers deserve Pepsi.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, how to get 30, how to get 20, 20, 20, how to get 20, 20, how to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Have you ever spotted McDonald's hot, crispy fries right as they're being scooped into the carton? And time just stands still. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Kelly Campbell, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me, John. It's a pleasure.
It is a real pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from New York. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about trauma-informed leadership. A really important topic. And, we all have stuff. We all have various baggage that we bring with us to, the various stages of life we find ourselves in and to our workplace. And so we're going to talk about what that means, for us to try to be our full, whole, authentic self and bring that to work and to be effective and successful leaders of self and of teams within the workplace, given this fact and given, that we all are trying to navigate. And of course, some people are navigating more trauma than others. It's a really hard thing. As we get started, I wanted to share Kelly's bio with everybody. Kelly Campbell, a trauma-informed leadership coach to emerging and established leaders who want to live, lead, and love with more confidence and freedom. They are the author of Heal to Lead, Revolutionizing Leadership Through Trauma Healing. As a sacred healing practitioner, Reiki master, and Cuddle therapist, they work one-to-one with those who have experienced trauma in childhood or adulthood. Kelly has written for Entrepreneur, Fast Company, and Forbes, and currently writes on Substack about the new TLC, Trauma, Leadership, and Consciousness. Their vision is for more than half of humanity to heal its childhood trauma so that we may reimagine and rebuild the world together. I love that. We need a lot more rebuilding. We need a lot more connecting. And so I love what you're doing. Kelly, anything you would like to add by way of your background, personal context before we dive on in?
I would say that, the only thing I would add to that is, I lived this. I was a former CEO for 14 years. And so I know firsthand what it feels like to bring that baggage, that trauma into a leadership role. And that's really kind of what set me on this course was owning that organization. It was a cause marketing agency where we did, websites and all sorts of digital marketing for nonprofits and foundations and social impact initiatives. So lots of important work. And I needed to be leading that team in the right ways. I think I got it right for most of the time, but I certainly saw how much my past emotional history was really running the show sometimes. So that's sort of after selling that company, that's what got me on this track.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the background, and it's important to know, what's the why and what's motivating what you're doing, and also just to re-acknowledge that we all have that. We all have some form of trauma that's impacting what we're doing, and sometimes we recognize it, and sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the issue. Part of the challenge is, if we're not fully aware, or if we're not fully acknowledging it. The reality is it is impacting us. And then, how is it manifesting? How are we projecting onto those around us?
Yeah.
Often in unhealthy ways that we don't want to, that it's not like we wake up in the morning thinking, how am I going to project my unhealthy baggage onto those around me? Like, people don't want to do that, but it's human nature, and it's just kind of what ends up happening unless we can become aware, unless we can then start to practice, put things in place that can allow us to have more healthy behaviors, treat ourselves with self-compassion, and then be in a place to have more healthy leadership interactions with those around us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It's definitely subconscious for, let's say, half of the people. And the other half, there is a conscious awareness of, hey, I want to be leading in a more productive way, a more effective way. Yet I feel like there's this thing from my past that's sort of like pulling at me and gripping at me, and it's holding me back from being the leader that I really want to be, the leader that I know I am, but I just can't really get past myself. And so that half of people, those are the self-aware folks who I do really well with, because if you have that little bit of self-awareness, we can work with that. We can say, okay, well, if you're onto yourself in these ways, those false narratives from when you grew up, that indirect messaging, those masks that you had to wear in order to, gain belonging, for example, in your family, you don't have to keep those on anymore, right? And so there's an unmasking, which sometimes it can be pretty scary, because that unmasking, we're so used to holding that as part of our identity that it's hard to drop that. And so for a lot of people, they don't touch this work with the 10-foot pole, even though they know that these narratives exist and these masks exist, because they're scared of what they might find out about themselves. That uncertainty really becomes a barrier. And
Yeah.
I get that. I really understand that. And, the other thing is, this is a tremendous amount of work. What we're talking about here is trauma integration as part
Yeah.
of a hallmark of effective leadership. And to integrate your trauma, it's not a one and done. It's not a singular ayahuasca journey. It's not 3 months in therapy, right? It's a lifelong commitment to healing. But the thing is, it's not just for yourself, it's for all of the other people in your life who you're going to have interactions with, whether those be family members or employees, coworkers, or just people in your personal life. So there's a lot there. And so I get why people shy away from it, or avoid it is probably a more accurate term. But there's so much benefit to actually diving in and doing the work.
Yeah, yeah. And we can shy away from it, we can avoid it, But, it's kind of like putting your head in the sand. I mean, you can't really avoid it. We're only pretending to avoid it because it still manifests and it still will impact. What are some of those signs, like within our day-to-day leadership, what are some of those signs of unresolved trauma that might manifest?
Yeah. So, I mean, day to day, let's say in your personal life, because every leader has a personal life as well, that could look like relationships that are really rocky, that you're noticing in multiple different areas of your life, right? It's not just at work, it's not just at home, it's not just with a friend group. It's you're noticing that the common denominator might actually be you in terms of not being able to communicate well, ask for what you need. Maybe there's resentment building up. So there's, let's say, some just rockiness to the relationships that are in your life. And, from on the business side, let's say you're a leader of an organization or a manager of a team or something like that, you might see things like attrition, right? There are employees who are leaving, coworkers who are like, I want to work for anyone but you, right? And so it can manifest as something overtly toxic. And that's sort of the example that I'm giving there. Or it can be less overt, right? And so we have this, what I talk about in the book sometimes is this spectrum between people pleasing and people controlling, right? And so people controlling leaders are more that overt. We see that happening on the political stage right now, extremely overt, extremely aggressive, very authoritarian. And then on the people pleasing side, which is the other end of that spectrum, we might see people offering to take workload off of someone else's plate, but then being resentful if they don't get the proper appreciation for it, or taking on so much because they find that that's where their value lies. And then again, being, resentful or undermining the growth opportunities of the people underneath them. So there's lots of ways that this manifests, whether it's inside of an organization or, inside of a family, anywhere that you are essentially taking a leadership role.
Yeah, yeah. And I appreciate that you're highlighting the different ways because trauma manifests in different ways, and it's not always overt toxicity. Passive aggressive behaviors can be a way that it manifests.
Yes.
People pleasing can be a way that it manifests.
Yeah.
And so, depending on different people's personalities, depending on the types of trauma that they've experienced, the different types of relationships that have caused those traumas in the past, all of those things can result in the way I interact with people in relationships today, right? And so ultimately, like you said, look for dysfunction today, and likely, dysfunction today is an indicator of dysfunction and trauma, caused dysfunction in the past that can be addressed. And there's a variety of ways that we can start to address that. Therapy is often involved. And, I usually will say that pretty much, I'm a believer in therapy, and I think pretty much everyone can benefit from therapy regardless. Just because it's just incredibly valuable. Pretty much everyone can benefit from regular self-reflective practice, meditation, those sorts of things on a regular basis. And so regardless of, anyone listening, anyone watching, if you're sitting there thinking, but I'm okay. I don't really have much trauma. I don't have much need for any of this. I'm like, well, maybe, but regardless, you're still going to benefit. If just assume that you do, like, because we probably all do anyways, but assume that you do and start to put into action some of the things that can help you to address the hard things, the traumas, the dysfunctional relationships, the things that probably have happened in the past, the things that could be setting you up for dysfunction currently. And it's going to benefit you because we all have that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I think it's important also to kind of backtrack and sort of say, well, what is trauma? What do we actually mean by that, right? Because everyone, as soon as you said, there a person might say, well, I had a perfect childhood. I don't have any trauma. That isn't possible, right? Because your parents came into that situation with some kind of experiences that were overwhelming to their nervous system, right? Whether they inherited that or experienced that themselves. And so that gets passed down, whether genetically through the DNA or through their behaviors, from a parenting standpoint. So when we talk about trauma, we're not only talking about, what the CDC and Kaiser Permanente study of ACEs defines trauma as, which is the things that we would assume or talk about as big T trauma, right? Parents that got divorced when you were a kid. Maybe there was a parent who was incarcerated. Maybe there's a parent who had mental illness. Maybe you grew up in a war-torn country. There's all of these things that are much bigger, quote unquote, traumas. But the things that are actually just as impactful, I say maybe even more so because they are really erode the sense of self, are the smaller T traumas. And those are the things that, we all experience in throughout our childhoods, essentially. So feelings of abandonment or rejection or betrayal or humiliation, that as soon as I say one of those words, your brain immediately goes to like walking into the cafeteria that time. And you know what I mean? Like there's always these childhood memories that it's like you can recall them so quickly because they're lodged in your body. The body stores our trauma. That's what it does. And so if we don't have mechanisms to release that, both cerebrally, you talked about talk therapy before, CBT. So cerebrally releasing those, verbally processing those, as well as the somatic component, getting it out of the body. Super, super important because the body can't discharge that through talking. So while I'm a huge proponent of talk therapy, it in and of itself cannot be a trauma integration modality because it's not able to discharge through the body. You really need to pair that with some somatic movement, some bodily movement. And that can look like all sorts of different things.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. So yes, it definitely, it could be like an abusive home, an abusive parent or any of those things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But it could be lots of different subtle things. And, I think of my own childhood and, for the most part, I would say I had a happy childhood. I had good parents. I had parents that were trying their best and no shade on my parents. Like I love my parents and they're good parents. But yeah, like there are things that I look back on and I'm like, man, there's hard stuff. And I joke with my kids. I'm like, yeah, just let me know when you need help paying those therapy bills because, I do the best I can, but my goodness, I'm sure there's things I'm doing that, not because it's intended, not because, I'm not like trying to mess them up, but I'm sure that there are things that I'm passing along, right? Because it's just part of the human condition, right?
You took the words right out of my mouth. This is part of the human experience. It's sort of, if you believe this, it's sort of set up this way. It's sort of designed this way, right? If we had no adversity, we wouldn't get to know the strength of our character, right? Not that I'm a proponent of more adversity just for that sake, but really, we go through all of these things as part of the lessons that we're here to learn. I'll just keep it, non-spiritual in that way. But yeah, we all have these lessons to learn, and the traumas that we experience, big T, small t, a combination of the two, that's it. And so when we take that, what I would call unsequenced or unresolved trauma, we can't change the fact that it happened, right? We certainly don't want to say, oh, well, that's in the past. I'll just get over it, because that's not possible either. It is stored in your body, as we said. When you take the responsibility as a leader to actually lean in and integrate that, right? To work through that, to verbally process that, journal, meditate, somatics, whatever modalities, you would like to use. When you integrate that, you can become that whole, more authentic version of yourself, that fuller version of yourself that can be comfortable with vulnerability, as an example, that can lead from a place of compassion for others because you have compassion for yourself. These are not soft things, right? If you need to stand up in front of a group of people and disclose something that happened to you when you were younger, that is incredibly brave and incredibly strong. Most people do not have the ability, the strength to do that. So when people say, yeah, vulnerability is such a weakness, we're not thinking about that in the right way. Also, that vulnerability and that compassion, that kind of dual, leadership combo really engenders so much trust among the people that you are leading. Again, whether it's family, employees, etc., it's like the culture that you really want, one that's really productive, one that's really loyal, one that just has a really good sense of belonging among it. I mean, that's the way to get there. So it's not soft and a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, what is the benefit of all of this? Is there an impact to the bottom line? Because everyone cares about money, or maybe, I don't know, that's changing a little bit, but we're starting to see that there's more to life than money."
Well, a
But
lot of people, right?
a lot of people still, especially if they're business owners or,
Yeah.
on the hook for certain sales numbers, if that's part of your leadership role. So the quick answer is yes, it impacts the bottom line very, very clearly. Because think about how expensive it is to replace an employee. And think about how expensive it is when there are multiple employees leaving, right? When there is disagreement among the team, when there's less communication among a team because there's fear in the culture. So now there's duplicate jobs being done, right? It really has legs in so many places, and it comes from the top down. So if you want a more profitable, more impactful organization, regardless of the products or services that you provide, it all starts with you as the leader. I really, truly believe that.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize here that we're not talking about emotional dumping, right? So appropriate levels of sharing. No, nobody's advocating for coming in and unloading everything on everyone around you. That's not appropriate. That's not effective. Nobody wants that, nobody wants to be unloaded on and dumped on by everyone around them, and nobody, and you shouldn't want to do that to everyone around you either.
Right.
But appropriate levels of authenticity and sharing absolutely can be very powerful, and that is how trust is built, right? You cannot build relationships of trust without having that kind of vulnerability and authenticity and sharing.
Right.
You just
Right.
can't, right?
Right. It's impossible.
It's impossible. Yeah. And so I appreciate you, certainly this has all sorts of implications for personal life and for family and for friendships and whatnot. If we bring it back into the workplace, absolutely it has implications for effective teams. It has implications for, effective coaching and mentoring relationships. If I'm thinking about how do I lead effectively, how do I, help, how do I have those performance conversations? How do I do all of that effectively? It's all built on relationships and it's all built on trust. And so you have to do the internal personal work first if you have hope of being an effective leader.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
And so while yes, it's uncomfortable to face your trauma, to face your past, and many people will want to try to set it aside, avoid it, whatever, however you want to frame it, but you can't really avoid it. And so we have to practice, this self-reflection and this trauma-informed approach so that we can become more self-aware and knowledgeable, and then like you've said multiple times, like find a way to release it, find a way to be more proactive about it, and that gives you an opportunity to just be a more powerful leader, to have more authentic and powerful relationships with those around you, and then that has all sorts of positive like business outcomes, increased levels of engagement and satisfaction and performance and creativity and innovation, all these bottom line impacts, right? That ultimately every organization is going to say they want, and all of that comes from stronger relationships, stronger teams, and that start with good leadership.
Yeah. I think that there's also sort of a misnomer when people hear about trauma-informed leadership, that word, just having trauma in that phrase, right? There's this automatic assumption that a leader who is trauma-informed needs to act the part of a counselor or a therapist to their employees, that they're gonna all of a sudden become like HR and have trauma dumped on them and all of these grievances, and that they're also going to have to like know everything there is to know about trauma and trauma responses, and they're going to basically essentially be like you know I don't know, like a neurologist or something, right?
Yeah.
So we're not saying that. We're not saying that at all. What we're saying is be aware of the impacts of how upbringing, various traumatic experiences impact people so that you can see essentially and make generous assumptions about what's going on with employees so that you can support them, right? It is definitely not about being their therapist. It's not about overextending yourself. It's about being a compassionate human. I mean, really, I would like to reframe that even like trauma informed came from the healthcare sector back in the 70s. But really, we're talking about trauma informed care as a leadership approach across all sectors. And it's just like be aware, track people, be observant, ask them what's going on, right? If there's some kind of issue. And really leaning into supporting people on a very different level than we've ever seen leaders do that before. I think one of the things that I also kind of went back to in the book was the Industrial Revolution, really with that productivity focused, that sort of factory mindset, where if an employee wasn't performing well, we could just rip them out and literally replace them within the hour. That mindset has become part of American culture from a workplace standpoint. And that's really where this rub is because it's not humanistic. And so what we're trying to do is bring the humanity back into the workplace. And a trauma-informed approach absolutely gets us there. It's a great framework. It's a great blueprint.
I love it. I love it. This has been such a great conversation. We could go much longer and talk about a lot more things, but I do note the time and I need to let you go here in a minute. Before we wrap things up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your book, and then give us the final word for today.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you having the conversation. All of the information about me and how to work with me and the book, everything is on my website at klcampbell.com. And yeah, the final word, I would go back to that vision that you mentioned earlier. I really think that if we lean into taking responsibility for our own trauma and for integrating that and working on healing that, we are going to live in a very, very different world. I think it will take, a little bit more of mass adoption once we hit that critical mass, but it's really not that big of a number when you think about it. And I believe that that's what we are at the tipping point of now in terms of desire. I'm not saying that we're there yet, but I'm saying we're seeing the impacts of authoritarian leadership and how childhood trauma has really impacted people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Vladimir Putin. We're seeing how that projection of pain, really what that looks like and how it impacts. I mean, when I say the world, I mean very, very clearly the world. So that's the overt version of this, but I think it's really timely because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about leaning into the opposite of that so that we can rebuild the world that you and I would like to live in.
I love it. Kelly, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Kelly can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.